Hi, welcome to this short presentation on understanding Indicator 2 data from the State Board of Education. I'm Lavinia and I'm here with Malia.
Hello.
Who is our data and statistics specialist. I'm the transition specialist, and we're going to try to help you figure out your Indicator 2 data, as it can sometimes be confusing. So before we dive into how the data is looked at and collected, we want to tell you about a new code that you'll see, because we have the new alternate diploma. In last December 2017, the board passed the alternate diploma, so you will see some new codes coming this school year in 2018-19. There is going to be more training information on the specifics of the alternate diploma, as well as how the codes are used. But just to give you a heads up, the GA code will mean graduate alternate diploma, and the RA code will be the retained senior code for a student that is on path to an alternate diploma. So in the past you may be familiar with the GT code, but now if it's a student that's on the alternate path to an alternate diploma, that you will use the RA code. So GA and RA codes are only for students with significant cognitive disabilities, and so those are students that have a SCRAM record marked 1%. So just to keep that in mind and to clarify that for you. So the definition really of Indicator 2 is dropout rate, but specifically that is the percentage of students ages 14 to 21 exiting special education who do so by dropping out of the school year in a single year. So it's looking at that event dropout rate. So in the numerator are those students who actually exited by dropping out, and then in the denominator would be all those students that are listed here. So students with any kind of a graduate code. You can see the different graduate codes there in the parentheses. A student who has a certificate of completion, and that's how they exit, or a student who has aged out, a student who has died, or other dropouts. So those are all the students that are in the denominator of the Indicator 2 dropout rate, and that will become a little more clear as we go through these slides.
Okay, so just to touch on how we determine which code to use, there are two different fields where data is collected for students exiting school. There's a high school completion status code, and there's an exit code. So our order of operations for selecting a code, the high school completion status takes priority. If that is not blank, then that's what we use. And then if the high school completion status is blank, then we look at the exit code. If the exit code is not blank, then that's what we use. And then once we've selected a code from high school completion status and exit code, or if both those fields are blank, then we look at if the student has a code, or if it's blank, it means we expect the student to return to school the next year. Retained seniors and students with transfer exit codes are expected to return to school the next year. Then we'll look to see if they actually do return to school the next year, and if they don't, then they get defined as a summer dropout.
Okay, so let's take a look at who are dropouts. And some of you may be thinking, well, I didn't actually have any students who dropped out, so why is it reflecting as a dropout? So we're just going to clarify who we count as dropouts. So a student who has a high school completion status from the previous school year of dropped out or graduation pending. And a graduation pending would be a student who didn't maybe finish up on time, but that needs to be updated by the following year by October 1 to a different code, such as graduates. Otherwise, it essentially defaults to a dropout. Also, if a high school completion status is blank, and the exit code is one of the following: either transfer to adult ed, dropped out, was expelled, exited to take the GED, has an unknown code, or withdrew. So all of those also will default to a dropout. Then there's summer dropout. So a student who is expected to return to school the next year but does not return by October 1 is considered a summer dropout. And so these are the ones you really want to be careful of. So if a high school student has a completion code of either RT, retained senior, or RA, which is the retained senior expected to finish with an alternate diploma, If those codes are not updated, then that can turn into a summer dropout. Also, the codes, the T codes, which are the transfer codes, if those are not, if a student is not picked up by another LEA or those codes are not changed by October 1, then they also default to a summer dropout essentially, or if it's left blank. So a little more about summer dropouts. These students might not actually be dropouts, and in most cases they may not be. The exit or completion status code on their last record with your LEA may simply just need to be updated. So it is really, if you are the sending LEA and you're expecting a student to transfer to a different LEA, or you're expecting them to return or finish up their graduation credits, you need to check on that, and then you would have to submit an S1X record to update that status. And Malia is going to talk a little more in depth on the next slides about the S1X record and how to do that. But there may also have been an error in their next year enrollment record, which made it seem that they did not re-enroll after exiting your last LEA. So see if you can track down the student, work with your UTEX data steward or the LEA where the student enrolled after leaving. So if a student tells you they're going to a different LEA, but they were not picked up on the UTEX system, it's really your responsibility to follow where that student went, maybe call the LEA that you expected them to go to, and see if you can track that student down. The current year enrollment data for the student may not have been submitted to UTEX. That's also a possibility, or there may have been a fatal error. So again, you'll want to work closely with your LEA UTEX data steward to get their enrollment record cleared up of errors and then submitted. So really important timelines for making sure that these data are correct. September 1st through October 1st is really the time you want to be looking and checking your data gateway to update all of the summer graduates. Also to check to make sure students that you anticipated moving actually got picked up by that other LEA and that the code reflects that. So you'll want to access data in Data Gateway, and Malia is going to explain how to do that in the next few slides. You want to verify their high school completion status code first, take a look at that, then look at their exit code, make sure that matches up, and then check for those summer dropouts to see if you can track the student down, see what happened to them. Did they in fact finish? Did they transfer? Maybe they were assigned incorrect SSID number and it didn't merge on the system. So those are things you'll want to check, and you'll want to do it in that window between September 1st and October 1st. Okay, so the last LEA with the student gets that student in their dropout rates. So you may think, well, this student is moving on to another LEA, it's not my responsibility. However, that's not the way it works. You, as the sending LEA, really needs to make sure that that student's code is correct. So if the student is a dropout, look at the high school completion code status or exit code, or if the student is expected to return, make sure that you check up on that. If you think they were going to another school in your LEA or another LEA in our state system, but they can't find their enrollment record, then you want to make sure that you follow up. Some of these students may not be dropouts, they just need their data fixed. So again, the transferred student may have gotten an incorrect SSID number, or they were assigned another one, and therefore it wouldn't match up in the system. They may have gone to a non-USBE school, so in other words, that student could have gone to a private school. You'll want to make sure you update those exit codes so that they don't end up reflecting as a dropout. Or a student that got a GED or completed graduation requirements during the summer would need an update in their exit code as well, though that person would maybe go from dropped out to completed their GED, and then that code would change, and in that case it would not reflect as a dropout.
Okay, so to help you with making sure that your event dropout or your indicator 2 dropout rate doesn't include students who shouldn't be there as dropouts, we created a report and put it in the data gateway that will allow you to see which students are going to show up in your dropout rate. So that report includes all of the previous year's 7th through 12th grade students who have an IEP who will be counted as dropouts for the previous year. So just to be aware, some of the seventh graders could be age 13. So since the indicator 2 is based on age, it's 14 through 21-year-olds. You might see some students in this report who won't end up being in your indicator 2, but it's good to check on their data and make sure it's correct anyway. And then beware that 12th graders, even if they're retained seniors who are past their cohort year, will be included in the dropout rate, all because it's age-based, age 14 through 21. So you'll want to check on them too. Okay, so first you'll have to have access to the data gateway. So if you don't already have a login to Data Gateway with access to this report, you'll want to contact your Data Gateway administrator. If you're the special ed director, then you should be given the access role called Special Education LEA User, and this will allow you to see the reports that we've designed for you to use to be useful to audit your data and see student level data for special ed students in your LEA. And the URL for the Data Gateway is datagateway.schools.utah.gov. You can also get there from navigating there from the USBE homepage, which is schools.utah.gov, and then find the link for Data Gateway and click on it. When you get to the Data Gateway homepage, you'll see on the right, you'll see a login link, and you'll see a little help icon, a little question mark, and you'll see a menu that says Data Gateway Training. There's some resources in here that can help you with getting started on Data Gateway, and then of course the login link to get you logged in. Once you're logged in, on the red bar you'll see a My Tools pull down menu. Click on that, and as long as you've got your correct special ed user role, you'll see a header of special education, and under that you'll see UTREC Special Education Reports. Click on that, and that'll bring you to the page that shows you the reports that are here for you to use. The Dropout Event Summary for Special Ed is the report that'll help you identify the students who will be dropouts in Indicator 2. You'll notice that it's listed under October reports. The dropout determination is a time-sensitive determination. Since we're looking for summer dropouts, which are defined as the students who were enrolled as of the end of your previous school year and expected to return to school the next school year, and which is showing up by October 1. So because we don't start submitting next year enrollment records usually until end of August, if you start looking at this report too soon, if you look at it in the beginning of August, it might seem like every single one of your special ed students is showing up as a dropout, as a summer dropout, and that's probably just because they haven't had their enrollment records for the new school year submitted. So we're going into the 2019 school year right now. So the dropout event summary for special ed, when you start looking at it in September, will be for your 2018 school year students. And the students who haven't shown up, don't have an enrollment record yet for 2019, if they're expected to return to school, will show up in there as summer dropouts. So just be aware of the time-sensitive nature of the report. Also, the deadline to get your data updated is the same deadline for the October 1 data submission, which currently in board rule is listed as October 10th. So, of course, it's good to keep records up to date throughout the year rather than waiting till the last minute. For students exiting your LEA, as soon as they exit, make sure that the high school completion status and exit code that you've submitted are accurate. You'll also want to double check again before the year-end data submission deadline and make sure that exit codes and high school completion status codes are accurate as of that time. And then if students aren't 12th graders and you expect them to return to school the next year, if they're enrolled through the end of that school year, so really they haven't exited, they're just taking the summer break, they're going to come back to school the next year, those can actually be left blank in the high school completion status and exit code. It just means we expect them to return to school if the exit code is blank. They haven't exited your school. And then any changes that you need to make to previous year exit codes. Sometimes a student changes their mind over the course of the summer. They expected to return and then they changed their mind and decided to go out of state or to a private school or something like that. Those updates need to be made by the October 1 deadline, again, which is October 10th. And those updates are usually made as either S1X records or as historical updates. And I'll go over both of those. And again, make sure that you review that dropout report during the month of September. And do it early because it might take some time to track down students, or if you find out that you need to have an SSID merge done, that takes time. So please don't wait till the last minute. Okay, S1X records. So you should work with your data gateway administrator on submitting these. If you don't understand what they are, please don't hesitate to ask. It's really important that these are done correctly. So you can't just go in and update the prior year enrollment record for a student because UTREX only accept records for the current school year. So now we're in the 2019 school year. If you have a student from 2018 who at the end of the school year you expected them, they thought they were going to just return to your school next year in 2019, then they changed their mind, they're moving out of state. So you can't just go into their 2018 enrollment record and change the exit code to say transfer out of state because UTREX is no longer getting 2018 enrollment records. We'll never know at the state level that student's exit code changed. It has to be submitted as a 2019 enrollment record. So that's where the S1X records come in. It's an enrollment record where you don't give the student any membership and you give them an X in the resident status field. And that basically tells UTREX that this student isn't actually enrolled. Just look for the most recent enrollment record and change the exit code or the high school completion status code. So you would put TO, in the case of this example of student transferring out of state, in the exit code, and UTREX knows to fix that prior year enrollment record to say TO in the exit code. Another example is a student who ended the previous school year with graduation pending in their high school completion status code, and if they finished their requirements during the summer and now they're a graduate, you can submit the S1X record with the high school completion status code of GR, and UTREX will update their final exit code. And as soon as you make those S1X record changes and submit to UTREX again, you should be able to go into that dropout report, and that student should no longer be showing up in there as a dropout. So again, beware, you can't just update your prior year record in your SIS because it won't get submitted to UTREX and it'll never be reflected in the dropout rate. So don't hesitate to ask if you are not sure about how to do the S1X records. It's very important. Another way of updating exit codes or high school completion status codes is through historical updates. So in some cases you might be updating an exit code for a student who is enrolled during the current school year, and so the S1X records won't work properly if the student is currently enrolled, and it has a little bit to do with the entry and exit dates. You can't have overlapping in entry and exit dates. So that's a form in UTREX that your UTREX data gateway administrator can go in and fill out the form with information about what needs to be updated and why. And then if that's approved, it gets fixed on the back end here by an IT person at USB, and once that fix is made, it'll usually you have a student with a fatal error, where a historical update needs to be done to fix the fatal error. And once the update gets made, then you should be able to submit the student's record and not get the fatal error anymore. So as an example, if a student was reported at the end of the previous school year with graduation pending, it should have been retained senior. You're trying to submit an enrollment record for the student during the current school year, so you can't also submit an S1X record. So that'll go in as a historical update request to change the GP status to an RT status. We have other trainings and help available, other resources on how information about Indicator 2, Indicator 1, things like that. So if you need additional help or resources, feel free to contact Lavinia or I at any time. Phone or email is fine, and we're here to help you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Malia. And we hope that this presentation helped clarify where Indicator 2 data comes from and how to make sure that your data is accurate. Thank you. All right, cool. So that